going.
Yes, because I had a guy, an older gentleman, he's going to retire in Florida, and his son's like 46, and he lived in nursing home. His nursing home didn't know how to handle mentally ill.
Sure.
And he lives here, and he wants his brother and sister live around here, and they don't want to deal with him. That's a 24-hour, everyday job. And I said, well, I don't want to really take him away out of Galesburg. He's never here.
Okay,
He asked me questions, you know.
So your question is there something equivalent to that here in McLean County, sort
You
of?
know, why don't they have a house for mentally ill?
I see.
He's like a 46, not in a nursing home.
I understand.
House.
Okay, so what's on the table is there a place for people to go or places for people to go who have a mental health diagnosis? That sort of thing is your question. Yes, go ahead.
Just to add to her comment, my brother is mentally ill and we're in the process of trying to figure out some housing options for him. So we need to do phone calls and all of the housing options that I found out about need to be court appointed, which basically forces people with mental illness to get into the judicial system before they can get a health base.
Okay, so just for the rest of the room, the issue here is to go into a facility of some kind, it would need to be court appointed. So that's a really nice segue into the next piece. We can maybe talk about that. But before we go to that, is there any commentary from anyone in the room, including the panel, on the issue of having a location? Did you want to touch on that issue?
Actually, I just couldn't help but notice, conspicuous by their absence are the healthcare providers. Were the hospitals invited?
Yes, so we tried to bring as many into this conversation. We can certainly talk through that some more. But the fact of the matter is, I think you're hitting on a point that this touches so many aspects of what it is to live in a community that we almost need to go beyond. This is one important step,
Sure.
But I appreciate your point of view, and we share that point of view as well.
Thank you.
Go
We
ahead.
look forward to ER doctors joining us for our next conversation.
Yeah. So did you want to jump in now? I'll get you in the back. You guys are very unengaged in this, I noticed. So, yeah, that was supposed to be a joke. It didn't.
It's an interrelated question. I appreciate your candor in talking about your mental illness, and I was wondering how young you were diagnosed, and if it were younger, would it have been helpful? And those of you working with teens, are you reaching out to them, or are they coming to you in analog medicine?
Okay, so two-part question. Just talk about maybe your own personal experience first, and then we'll hit on the second part. Does anyone want to share?
I was diagnosed in my early 20s, early 30s. And it's really hard to accept you're diagnosed because I feel like the whole world is coming in on you. So right now, I'm accepting it more than I did when I was diagnosed.
Okay, so thank you for that. Others?
I was diagnosed about 14 years ago after the birth of my twins, and I was very accepting of the mental illness diagnosis because I actually took it to my psychiatrist myself. A lot of times what happens is somebody goes years with the wrong diagnosis, and if they could have gotten diagnosed right, they would have been in a much better place. So I think letting people know what the symptoms are of some of these disorders can help them talk to their doctors more frequently and better when it comes to psychiatrists.
That's fair. You could probably hit the second part of the question, I imagine, right?
Yes, and I can also answer to the first part, actually.
Okay.
I also have a history of mental illness, and my major depressive disorder already had the reins in my life when I was 10 years old, but it took until I was 15 for anyone in my life to recognize the symptoms, and that was because my parents had no information, my teachers had no information, my friends had no information about what mental illness looks like in young people, because it doesn't always play out the same way when people are young versus if they're fully grown. Some of the symptoms are very different. So if I had had access to the kind of resources that we are trying to build here when I was 10 years old, I might have saved years of pain, but there was no awareness of what this looks like. And I think I also wanted to address, one of your questions earlier was about what are the misconceptions about mentally ill people. And I think one of the biggest ones is that people who are mentally ill are a drain on society and can't contribute in a meaningful way. And I think that that's just so deeply wrong. Because, I've been on antidepressants for over 10 years, and I am a mental health professional who works in the community, and I think that I'm able to bring a lot to the people that I serve, and none of that is in any way negated by the struggles that I have personally endured. I think actually being able to speak with candor and being able to share what we've experienced only gives us more strength by showing that vulnerability. And in terms of the second part of the question, I think a lot of young people don't seek out treatment. I think a lot of young people only end up receiving care when there's some kind of crisis, when they are involved in maybe a physical fight at school or something else that is explosive. Nobody is asking questions before they get to that point, I think. And maybe part of our job is to start reaching out before those young people have to have some kind of altercation that cannot be ignored.
So I think that answers your question. Yes. Oh, go ahead, please.
I wanted to respond to one of the concerns with the housing.
Yeah, go ahead.
On the one issue of the court-appointed, a lot of the times, I suspect it's because they're in a triage mode of trying to take the folks who are the worst off. Also, sometimes it's that housing is based on grants, and that's a condition of it sometimes, so it's going to really vary depending on who they are. From our standpoint of it, usually we don't even know. We'll have a defense attorney say, hey, they're trying to get into whatever housing, we got to get a court order for something, and our response is almost always, okay, we don't have any problem with that. However, I guess what I also want to mention is in the mental health action plan that the county board recently completed through 2 of their committees, one of the things that was identified as a significant gap in the community is housing for those with mental illness. And I think that's the first step, identifying that that's an issue that needs to be addressed. And that is one of the long-term objectives, to try to come up with a solution to that. Because from a practical standpoint, if you're dealing with people who are having to either get regular counseling or to take regular medication, we can't expect them to make that their first priority when they're not even sure where they're going to be sleeping that night, where they're not sure where the next meal is going to come from. You kind of have to have a stable environment for people before you can expect them to try to get everything else under control.
Very good. So that's good. Why don't we stop there? Please hold your questions, though. Don't lose that. And let's go ahead and move to the next portion of our meeting and get more into law and justice. I think we had a natural segue to that even now. So let me ask this question, and let's let the panel kind of jump in on this for starters. How can we care for the needs of those with a mental health diagnosis, in the legal or judicial process? So let's go ahead and just pick up on where you left off and go from there. Did you want to start?
Yeah, I will.
Okay.
I think part of the problem is the criminal justice system is not designed to address the mental health issues. And that really permeates the whole thing in that we have people, we have Judge Yoder and I who, we didn't go to law school saying, hey, I want to get into mental health issues. It was, we have attorneys who are trying to figure out a solution to a mental health problem, and we're willing to learn about it, but that's not our field of expertise. So it's kind of like going to a foot doctor for a sore throat a little bit. There's a disconnect in that. We should be the last line of defense on a lot from a public safety standpoint. I mean, the criminal justice system, usually people think of that as historically it's punishment, it's incarceration, and we're looking at it from a different context of, all right, we've got these folks who are not being addressed at the level that it should. It escalates to the point where we have victims in some cases. Now we've got to do something to fix it, but it's a shame a lot of the time when it gets to that level.
Very good. Thank you for that. Other thoughts about this piece?
Well, I agree with Jason that the legal system certainly wasn't designed in a fashion that would adequately address mental health issues. In the history of this nation, mental health issues have never been adequately addressed by the justice system. Unfortunately, the only way that some people ever receive treatment or is when they're arrested and they're forced into the justice system, and then there are court ordered sentence or sanctions to help get that person treatment. The justice system and the court system through the Illinois Supreme Court is trying to address that gap in the justice system. The Illinois Supreme Court is a big advocate, as much as the courts can be advocates, of problem-solving courts, and that's brought on the push towards mental health courts and drug courts. The court that I preside over, the mental health court, it's called Recovery Court here in McLean County. Every week we've right now got 18 people in this program, and they appear in front of me either once a week, once every 2 weeks, or once a month, depending on where they are in the system, in the program, and how well they've done. A couple of the things we pointed out today, the housing issue. The housing issue is one of the most difficult issues for us to address, because the people that are following every other aspect of the program are totally compliant, oftentimes have no place to live, or I should say no adequate place to live. Roach-infested, bed-bug-infested apartment that, and we're struggling with finding them a place to live. So I agree that housing is a top priority, or should be a top priority, and I was happy to see in the county plan that that's one of the areas that they believe needs to be addressed as well.
Keep going.
The other issue on housing or court-ordered treatment is that it is also the law in this nation that treatment or that forced housing or treatment has to be the least restrictive means available to address the problem, the mental health issue of the particular patient. And so, if you look back in the history of this nation, it used to be that there were asylums or really horrendous treatment of mentally ill people. And so some well-meaning individuals filed suit way back against this type of treatment of the mentally ill. And the answer the courts gave, in essence, what happened was all of these facilities they opened their doors and people were just pushed out onto the street. And that's now resulted in a large portion of mentally ill individuals being homeless and living on the streets. So, I don't know where this is all going to end up. I think the courts are trying to, the justice system is trying to respond to this. I think it needs to be a multidisciplinary approach, for which I applaud the county board and the other governmental bodies and treatment facilities. They're all taking part in trying to solve the problem or talk about it and deal with it. And that's one of the beautiful things of this county. McLean County has a great history of all of these different disciplines working together in a cooperative fashion, more so than you might see in other parts of the state and the country. So I think there is hope.
Thank you. Can we touch a little bit, sort of related to this, on any of the expansion in the jail system for specifically addressing those with a mental health diagnosis? Are there things underway there, or go ahead, either one of you.
Well, I'll start, and I think Jason probably has more information on this than I do, but there is a jail expansion that's going to occur, and part of that is designed to address adequate mental health, where to house inmates that are mentally ill. Right now, they're down in Booking, which is not where they're supposed to be. And so I don't think that's.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
One of the largest housers of the mentally ill in our country are penal institutions, our jails and our prisons. And McLean County is no exception to that. In the jail, there are a lot of people there who have those mental health issues, and right now they're being housed in Booking. And the reason for that is because a lot of times they need someone to be able to see them 24 hours. And the only place where they're able to do that is in the Booking. It's not a good situation for somebody who is trying to, if we're dealing with a fitness issue of somebody who's got their mental health situation is so bad that they're not even able to understand the the nature of the proceedings against them. They're not able to effectively communicate with the defense attorney at all. And now we're putting them in a situation in booking where it's, light 24 hours. It's not a healthy situation for anybody, let alone somebody who's mentally ill and trying to just become fit. And one of the expansions, one of the biggest issues with the expansion, regardless of the population at any given time, because on any given day, our population goes up and down in the jails, and some days it's it's close to overcrowding, and some days it's there's plenty of room. But it doesn't change the fact that the housing for those with mental illness stays the same the whole time. And one of the things that the expansion is going to do is create a better environment for those who have the mental health issues, in terms of trying to get them to a level of fitness so that we can have their case start proceeding. Because as long as somebody is considered unfit, that case is stopped. I have one that I assigned myself on where we've been seeking a fitness, just an evaluation of fitness since, I think November was when it was filed. And nothing my office can do each time it comes in. They say, the defense says, we haven't gotten an evaluation done yet. Okay, then we wait. But that also means that person's been sitting down there in custody that entire time, waiting for that to happen. We have a victim who keeps wanting to know what's happening with the case, and the only response we can give them is, we still have to wait. One of the things that expansion is going to do is hopefully make it so that those folks are in a better environment where that process can move along a little bit better, and also is going to be healthier for them as well.
I just wanted to revisit, if I could, the topic of housing, because I was sitting here looking at the agenda where we're supposed to be talking about support and education, law and justice, and advocacy, and I was sitting here thinking that the topic of housing really falls into all of these components, because before my husband and I began integrity counseling, I worked as a counselor at Housing and Home Ministries, and that was a huge issue for people trying to move from the shelter to housing that they could afford. People are often turned away because of a criminal background. Landlords don't accept people because they have a criminal background. So, we need to really advocate for people that may have had a criminal history, but now maybe mentally stable because they're on medication. They may have improved their lives in many ways. So we need to advocate for landlords to accept people. A lot of people are turned away as well for a lot of debt. They don't pass a credit check. So there's just so many things. So, as far as what I was trying to point out is that falls really into advocacy, education, and
It's not just one issue.
Exactly.
So mitigating problems, so let's get to prevention a little bit, and we'll get to the audience in just a moment here, just to stay with the panel for just a few more moments. How do families mitigate the issues that happen in connection with, the law and justice process? How can they help in that regard?
So there's a lot of family members who, just speaking from my own experience, never wanted my family member to be in county jail. And I think we all touched on the fact that having charges against you then forces the person to get the help that they need, which is really an unfortunate situation. I remember being in the ERs and being told that, really the best thing that could happen is for your family member to be arrested. So that the way that plays out is they get held in county jail for 45 days at minimum in a single cell or isolation, and then they wait. They wait for a transfer to a state hospital, or they wait for a transfer to a local hospital, which one of our discussions, in meeting for these forums is that even Broman is, how long can they wait, right? They just wait and wait and wait. And it's just such a tragedy. But I think that, we talk about, okay, so this is where we're at now, and what can we do to improve the process? And I really think that expanding the county jail to have a unit in which these patients, these ill people, can wait in an environment that is conducive to recovery.
You know, a lot of these cases are situations where, so everyone who's sitting in the jail has a bond that is set, has the ability, or not the ability, but has a number where if they're able to post it, they're able to get out. And a lot of the folks who end up sitting there in these cases don't have, we're not talking about people who have bonds of $500,000 or $1 million. We're talking about situations oftentimes where the family could show up and bond them out for a reasonable number, at least in terms of as far as bonds go. But I'll have those family members call me and say, so what's going to happen? And I have to be careful because I'm not supposed to do anything where I'm communicating with the defendant by way of their family. I'm supposed to talk to, I can talk with the family members, but I can't say you need to tell them to do this because they're represented. The only way I'm able to talk with the defendant is through their counsel. However, oftentimes the defendant's family members are telling me, so if we don't bond them out, then they'll just stay there in the jail unless somebody bonds them out. And you were asking about mitigating. Oftentimes it's a situation where it's the family members of that defendant who are saying, well, we're not going to go bond them out because we don't know what else to do. Things have gotten out of control. And then sometimes after 30 days, they'll come bond them out. Sometimes they'll leave them there during the pendency of the case.
About power of attorney, and we'll get you just one more question here. Power of attorney, or are there other legal documents or exercises that we can do to try to help out here?
Well, that would be something where sometimes the jail won't share that information unless there is that power of attorney for health care. But that's something that the criminal justice system can't help with. That's something that family member would have to seek getting that process for them separately.
Okay, let's get to that in a moment. Other thoughts for the panel before we move to the audience?